Okay, welcome to the January 14th Seneca County IDA meeting. Happy New Year, everyone. So we are going to start with the election of officers for the year. You have in your packet the lineup. Anybody surprised to see their name there? Let me know. For this year, it's myself as chair, Ralph as vice chair, Ben is the treasurer, and Marie as secretary. The IDA committees, the governance committee, myself, Ralph, Adam, the audit committee, Ben, Adam, and myself, and the IDA finance committee, Ben, Adam, and myself. Are there any questions about that lineup? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the IDA officers?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Ralph, Ben, second. Is this a voice vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have officers. That's great. Thank you, everyone. Minutes of December 10th. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes of the meeting of December 10th?
I move to
Thank you.
accept.
Ralph, second. Is there any discussion? No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. And next, we have financial statements.
Good morning, everyone. I'll be reviewing in summary the balance sheet and the profit and loss statement. Looking at the balance sheet, our total assets at the end of November measured $3,928,000 compared to $3,956,000 at the end of October. A net change of a negative $28,620. And the changes occurred in checking and savings accounts, which were $3,270,783 at the end of November, compared to $3,293,199 at the end of October. In this case, a net change of a negative $22,416. The driving factor in that was a net loss that was incurred for the month of November of $28,440. The makeup of the balance sheet, again, checking and savings is $3,270,000. Notes receivable, current portion of $36,000. Total current assets of $3,306,000. Notes receivable, long-term, $152,000. Total fixed assets, $355,000. Total other assets of $112,000. Looking at liabilities and equity, accounts payable at the end of November measured zero. Credit card payable was $116. That's down to $181 from October. Labor and compliance pass-through $44.15. No change for the month. Pilot program zero. Net pension liability of $118,343. No change for the period. Fifth deposits held $33,132. No change for the period. Total current liabilities, $156,000. Deferred revenue, zero. Deferred inflows, leases, zero. Due to other governments, $21,854. No change for the period, and that represents the pension liability. Total equity, $3,750,000, compared to $3,778,779 at the end of October. A net change of a minus $28,439. Total liabilities and equity, $3,928,000 at the end of November, compared to $3,956,820 at the end of October. Again, a net change of a negative $28,620. Driving force again was a net loss for the period. Looking at the profit and loss statement, total ordinary income at the end of November was $249,351, compared to $248,302 at the end of October. Again, a very modest change in ordinary income for the period of $1,049. Total operating expenses, $407,829, compared to $378,340 for the month of October, a net change of $29,489 for the month. Net ordinary income, $158,478, that's a net loss, compared to $130,038 at the end of October, a net change of $28,440. Again, that represents the loss in the period. Total other income, zero. Total other expenses, zero. Net income or loss through the end of November, $158,478. Again, at the end, that's a negative figure. And $130,038 negative figure in October. A net change of $28,440. The makeup of the profit and loss side, on the revenue side, total agency fees, $31,784. No change for the period. Seneca County income, $54,000. Again, no change for the period. Rent lease income, $100,000, no change for the period. RLF income, $88.46, compared to $78.42. It's a difference of $1,004, and that represents the change for the period. Net interest income, $54,722, compared to $54,676. That's a a change of $46 for the period. Property sales, zero. Miscellaneous income, zero. Total ordinary income, $249,352, compared to $248,302 at the end of October, a net change of $1,050. On the expense side, payroll through November was $203,647. Benefits, $102,231. Professional services, $53,663. General office expense of $89.71. Administrative and tech, $12,241. Insurance, $25.80. Miscellaneous expense, $27.64. Travel and conferences, $945. Repairs and maintenance, $14,986. Marketing and promotion, zero at the end of November. Marketing and depreciation expense of $36.96. And RLF expense of $22,075. Total expenses, ordinary expenses, again through November, is $407,829, compared to $378,341 at the end of October. So there was a change in expenses of $29,488 for the month overall. Again, that's a brief summary of the balance sheet and the P&L statement. Are there any questions relating to financials?
So did we get payments in from the Lodi project?
No, we
No.
didn't close on those in 2024, unfortunately, so those will end up being a 2025 item.
Okay, 2025 is gonna be a good year.
I would point out too that on the balance sheet, the notes receivable are current for Bessemer and Schrader.
So if we recall from Sarah's annual review in December, 2024 was a soft year, and all these numbers are 24 numbers, and just basically reiterate that 24 was a soft year. But we're working to change that.
Sure, any positive developments for December?
So there are, one of the things that I've come to sort of work or sort of wrestle with is how do we provide guidance to this group based on leads that are coming in, but haven't officially been disclosed to the public. So there are, and if we recall Sarah's pipeline report from last month, we have these different potential projects in the pipeline at various stages. Have any of them moved from one category to the other in the last 30 days?
There was one that we're awaiting application on. I'm still waiting on the application, anticipating that it'll come in this month. There's one other that I might classify a little bit stronger than it was last time. I don't quite remember what category it fell into, but there was a project that received some state funding and support that makes the likelihood of that project being able to move forward much higher. Other than that, probably nothing has moved since December.
Among the things that we should keep our eyes on is the county formed an LDC, a local development corporation. That's a type of economic development group that isn't sort of bound by the same legal kind of structures that the IDA is bound by, but it's another new group being set up at the county to kind of work jointly with the IDA in economic development. Nothing's gonna happen overnight. That LDC board was actually interviewed and named back in September or October, but the county's budget deliberations, which became, I think, pretty sort of challenging in some ways, basically put that LDC effort on hold. Now that the budget's been passed, Ernie, you can confirm or clarify this, but I think now that the budget's been passed, the county is now turning its attention to that particular LDC and getting it moving as well. We expect to work pretty closely with that LDC. It's being overseen by the Economic Development, Tourism, and Housing Task Force. That's a committee that's has as its chair Jeff Trout. You're on that committee, Ernie.
Right,
And
yeah, we had a meeting a week or so ago, and that was the topic.
so when we get to your piece of this, I'd like to hear your thoughts on how that's going. So basically, it's 2024 was a tough year. We're gonna work to make 2025 a better one. Any other comments? Do we have a motion to accept the financial statements?
So move.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for that. Board member annual disclosure forms. These are documents which everyone needs to sign. All we would ask is, since we're all here, before you leave today, it simply is a requirement that you read them, you agree with what's there, and then you sign, provided you agree. Any questions? No. All right, we have some resolutions required. Sarah, do you want to talk about those?
Sure, so we update these resolutions and pass them every year at our January meeting. It's always our first slate of resolutions for the year, things that we're required to have on hand for our audit, and all the other IDAs have them as well. So the board typically votes on them as a group, which is why they're all listed, but if anybody has any objection to that, as I kind of talk through what these are, please feel free to say something. We can split them out if necessary. So the first one is designating the IDA's banking institutions. It says for 2025, the IDA can use Chemung Canal Trust Company, M&T Bank, Generations Commercial Bank, Community Bank, Five Star Bank, Lions National Bank, and Savannah Bank. The second resolution designates the people that are authorized to sign our IDA checks. That is more or less our officers and executives, so chairman, vice chairman, secretary, treasurer, executive director, and chief financial officer. Third resolution designates our legal and bond counsel as the helping firm. I think you guys all have met Rob, and I think you three gotten to meet him at the last meeting, but there he is. Our fourth resolution designates our accountant and bookkeeper. So Dermody, Burke, and Brown is the firm that serves as our accountant. Eleanor Beatty or Ellie Beatty is our bookkeeper for the IDA. Fifth resolution is our designation of our auditor. So this was approved in some form already at our December board meeting, where the board voted to, or even before that, I can't remember, we did it in November maybe, but authorized the engagement letter with Mengel, Metzger, and Barr to do our audit. And then the last two resolutions, Resolution 6 appoints CEO, names myself as CEO, and Resolution 7 is to appoint Bob Kernan as Chief Financial Officer.
Does anybody wish to vote on any of these individually, or should we vote on them otherwise as a group? Sounds like we can vote on all of them as a group. And this is a roll call vote.
We need a motion and a second first, and then a roll call.
So moved.
We got a second to accept these resolutions.
Second.
Second, all right, roll call vote. Kelly?
Mr. Brownell,
Yes.
Ms. Capelli,
Yes.
Mr. Guthrie,
Yes.
Mr. Cure,
Yes.
Mr. Bruce Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Tom Murray,
Yes.
Mr. Lott,
Yes.
Ms. Weiss,
Yes.
Mr. Shipley, absent, motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Next, the second item, the Chamber of Commerce update. Jeff Shipley is not here, so we won't be hearing from Jeff. Next is Ernie, the Board of Supervisors update.
Well, I think Judy's starting out this year and putting a plan together for a county manager. And committees right now, just getting the year started.
And is there a plan for the county manager?
That we're working on that.
Okay.
Had a little discussion the other day and stuff, so I think that'll be taking place this coming year.
Great, great. Any questions for Ernie? Ben?
So Ernie, did the 17% increase go through? Is that what the budget, the
Oh,
new
it
budget?
got down to that. It was down to 9, I believe.
Yeah, 9.
What was finally
9%.
approved?
Yeah,
It was 9?
yeah.
So there
Oh,
was
I
a,
didn't hear that.
so the county had proposed as much as a 20% tax increase. It got whittled back to 17, and then it got whittled back to around 9, and the budget gap was then closed by dipping into the reserves.
I think to start with, it was 30%. I don't know why they even would mention that, it's getting that down, so they worked hard and got it down to 9.
And,
They had one in 10 years, so, like,
yeah,
And
the
the
town of Junius where I am is a little increase each year. You don't see anything and everything's okay, but when you start talking to 30, you got a fight ahead of you.
And the alternatives seem to be either take a lot of tough medicine one time, or take semi-tough medicine multiple times. And all in the interest of maintaining some reserve at the county level. And it would appear that in this case, the reserves were used to close the budget gap and keep the tax increase under 10%. But it also basically kicks the can down the road a little bit.
and does the IDA still get 50,000 in this budget?
So our historic contribution from the Board of Supervisors was always 54,000. well before my time. At one point, it was a little more than that. I'm not sure when the change was made, but this year's budget, we had requested 100,000, which obviously was a rather ambitious ask given the budget constraints they were under. What ultimately was approved was 65,000 for the IDA. So we will be seeing an increase from the supervisors, not as much as we asked for, but it's, you know, a wonderful show of support. So we're very pleased with the outcome.
The other thing that, the case we made in asking for that additional amount was the fact that we're now in a building of our own. Our expenses have gone up substantially. We didn't have the same expenses when we were using county office space. This gives us a little bit more autonomy, a little bit more freedom, but it costs us a little bit more. And I think there was some recognition of that. They are, the former county executive asked us on April 1st of last year to move in 30 days from the office space. It was a little bit of a surprise. I think Sarah and David did,
And Kelly.
and Kelly, sorry, excuse me, did an incredible job moving in 2 weeks. And so we're here, but it has gone kind of unnoticed by the county. My own feeling is it's better to be master of your own fate than under someone else's thumb. Okay, any other comments on county budget issues as they relate to the IDA? Okay, now, next item is approval of staff pay rates. I have a little discussion to go on this, so I'm gonna ask that we go into executive session. And I request a motion to enter into executive session for discussion of the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of particular persons or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of particular persons. This should not take a long time.
So move.
Thank you, Ben. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ralph. We are now in executive session. Okay, we are back from executive session, and we have a resolution. We need a motion to approve the compensation adjustments for the.
Excuse me, do we need a motion to come out of executive
Oh.
session first?
Sorry,
Yes.
yes, excuse me, thank you.
Okay.
He's the parliamentarian. Would anyone make a motion to come out of executive session?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Brownell.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now, next item is a resolution to approve the compensation adjustments for the team, the IDAs.
So move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
The adjustments this year, for the record, are for Mr. Hewitt and Ms. Klein, 3%, and for Ms. Davis, 4.9%. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. Is there any other business, Sarah?
Just a few items that I wanted to kind of fill folks in on. So first is a couple of project updates. So as we mentioned during the financials, the Lodi Solar projects, we did not officially close on in 2024. We have at this point though approved all of the documents for closing, so things like the decommissioning agreement, all the landscaping plans, all of the requirements that this board had in the final resolution in regards to maintenance. All of that's been done, so we should be ready to close hopefully very soon. The Finger Lakes Rail project that has been going slower than any of us anticipated. The company tried to come back and push for more favorable terms after we'd already had, many weeks of discussion at this point. So the IDA directors all felt strongly that we were going to stick to our original offer, which was basically a freight revenue model for payments at 3.5%, which is a substantial increase from what they had previously, plus increased agency fees, but that's being offset by a sales tax exemption. The caveat was that we are going to require the company to continue to provide basically exemptions to the municipalities for rent payments of crossing. So anywhere that there is a railroad and let's say a town wants to run a water line or something underneath the railroad, traditionally they would have to pay a lease payment to the railroad. Well, Finger Lakes Rail has historically not charged those. They've considered that sort of a service to the municipalities. When we decided to stick to our guns on the 3.5%, they had talked about, potentially having to start charging those payments, and all the IDA directors felt no, that those were going to be a material term. So we're still kind of waiting on all of the confirmation that the company is still willing to move ahead with that. Hopefully we'll have that very soon so we can get those public hearings done and get that project to you guys for a final review at our February meeting, I think is the plan, although we'll see. And then the last...
Sarah, one quick minute. Why did Onondaga County pull out of the rest of the counties? Was there, because there's more rail in Onondaga County and the switch? There's a big...
No, I think they actually have
Less?
a little less rail than some of us. We're up there as far as the amount of rail through our county. Onondaga pulled out because they want the railroad to sort of fit within the same bucket as all of their other projects. And so they felt strongly about making them sort of pay their standard schedule and pay their agency fee up front, and weren't really willing to make some of the concessions that the rest of us were in order to keep the railroad operational. And it became very evident that if we all stuck to the same terms as Onondaga, that the railroad would be likely going out of business. So that's more or less.
Do they
what
have
I
their
think.
agreement done yet, or not? They're not done either.
I don't think it's closed yet.
Okay. Just curious.
I'm not understanding, you said the water line to go under the railroad. You mean at a crossing, if the road comes and they wanna bore underneath the railroad?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, because
Okay.
the railroad is their property, so they're essentially, giving a right of way to somebody to put infrastructure through it or under it or whatever. And that they could charge a rent on that. We're basically saying, you're not gonna start charging rent on our towns and counties and whoever just because we're gonna be making you pay more in a pilot. It would just be offsetting at that
And
point.
would that be for existing right-of-ways that are already underneath them, or is this new?
That's something that has to be discussed, so it'll be for at least all of the existing. Schuyler County has 2 new crossing points that they want, so we're trying to get all of that worded in. At this point, everything is going through attorneys.
So they're charging the municipal 3%
No,
to go under?
no, so they
Oh.
now don't charge the municipalities anything. They historically were paying a pilot based on freight revenue, but it was 2.75% of their freight revenue was being paid out and then divided between all of the counties for the pilots. We've proposed an increase to 3.5% of their freight revenue. And so because of that, they're like, we might have to start considering charging the municipalities for these crossings, and we've said,
And
no, a term of getting the pilot is that you don't.
Seneca County's share of that turns out to be how much?
So
monthly?
we will be splitting it equally between the 5 counties in the agreement.
And the estimated amount is roughly within,
Hold on, let me pull it up really quick. I don't recall off the top of my head. It's been a little while since I've looked at the spreadsheets.
But what you're saying, though, the deal, it's like, you charge us here, well, we're gonna charge you over there to make up the difference.
the net, though, was not a lot of money to the county, to this, we're not getting a big, check. fee.
Our agency fee would be paid out over time. It's, right now, the
It's- when you
discussions
say it's over
are
time-
that it would be 1% of their capital project cost in our county in a given year, or $5,000, whichever is higher. Based on the schedule they've given us of projects that they're hoping to do under this, what's being proposed as a 10-year agreement, I think every year but one would be higher than 5,000. So their total capital budget estimated in Seneca was, I think, just north of 8 million. So to give you a very rough idea right now, it'd be essentially a little over 1% of that. But as soon as we've got actual confirmation of terms from them, we'll get a schedule finalized, we'll get a cost benefit analysis done, all of that will be shared with you all so you can see what the actual numbers are.
It's not a lot of money, but the service of having that rail available is very valuable to the people in the county. So it's not about how much money we're making on it, even though it's not much, it's about keeping those lines open.
And then the last item is not really a project update, but something that's on the horizon, is we've had some initial talks with the land bank. They have properties that they're looking to develop specifically for housing as a way to address the housing need in the county. And some of you may know, they've been working with Seneca Housing, who was just named by the state as a rural preservation company. It enables them to go after some state grant funding that wasn't otherwise available. And as part of that, they would like to work with us on establishing a pilot schedule specifically to help incentivize the development of land bank properties into housing.
Did they give us an idea of how many properties that might be?
I do not know. There is a project that is in the works right now. They've got a state application they're working on. It's multiple town project. So they've got property in the hamlet of Willard in Romulus, and then they've got a property down in Ovid. They're looking, if I'm remembering correctly, it's collectively like, I think 8 to 10 new housing units between the two. So that would potentially be, one project coming to us for consideration, so long as we can get a new sort of program set aside, because with this model, it would be Seneca Housing is a not-for-profit, and so, we'd be having to do some considerations when it comes to payment schedules and agency fees and that sort of thing, but it would be a way to specifically target some of these land bank properties, get them back on the tax rolls, get new housing built for folks.
So land bank is rehabbing existing properties, not new construction, correct?
It's a mix of both. So they do have some vacant properties that would be completely new construction. There are some properties the land bank acquires that are not really salvageable for rehab and need to be torn down and then new construction. There are some that could be renovations. So it's really any and all.
And on that front, it's basically, is the IDA likely to want to support housing development that is not kind of classic developer funded and market rate construction? It's a nonprofit using the vehicles that it's got behind it, a lot of public money. And are we as an IDA open to offering that type of entity tax incentives? When the details are clearer, we'll get to that, but it's pushing it. Has the IDA ever done that before, to your knowledge?
We've done housing before. We've never done housing. We've never done a land bank project, as far as I know. And we've done very few housing projects up till now. So for us, this will be almost entirely new. What we'd likely be looking at is an update and amendment to our uniform tax exemption policy. That's, just as a reminder, that's where all of our abatement schedules and everything live, and what this would look like would likely be a new sort of separate abatement schedule specifically for these types of projects. Yeah.
I can't think of the name of it, that new one that was built in Seneca Falls, it was the old auto dealership.
The Huntington Apartment.
Huntington.
Did they approach us at all? I mean,
Yes, that was an IDA project.
That's an IDA project.
But that's a big housing developer. I mean, what we're talking about, these are much smaller projects, basically all local folks. And just to kind of throw it out there, I mean, there's a part of New York State tax code, and this is some of the details that I have to get more familiar with and want to provide to all of you before we make any decisions on this, is there's a tax code that essentially right now could enable Seneca Housing to not pay property taxes at all on these parcels that they're looking to develop. However, the land bank, as part of their mission, is to have properties rehabbed and to put them back on the tax rolls. So the land bank wants these properties to be under a pilot payment instead, because they want some tax revenue going back to the county. They want the county to see the value in the work that the land bank is doing and to continue to support the housing trust fund that has been or is being created. So there's that piece. Then there's the piece of, because it's a not-for-profit, housing developer, and we're talking about like workforce housing, where basically the most somebody would be making, probably living in one of these units, would be 120% of the area median income. I mean, we're talking about, what's affordable for people that are actually living and working in Seneca County.
do you know what our median is right now? Is it like 50?
Last I looked, I think it was around 56,000. I'd have to double check on that.
No, that seems to me what it is.
It's not very much. So part of the issue with this is that, the land bank wants some tax revenue coming in from these properties. Seneca Housing would not be able to afford with these developments to pay full taxes on them. So likely what we'd be looking at is some sort of schedule that's based on payments are based on a percentage of their revenue, similar to what we're talking about with Finger Lakes Rail in a way. And then the final piece would be, because of the financial situation of the land bank and Seneca Housing, they wouldn't necessarily be able to afford our full agency fee on these projects. So we'd likely be looking at a reduced agency fee as well. Again, all details that kind of need to be ironed out and laid out for you all for consideration.
See, some of these have gotta be demolished.
Some of
That's
these
the
have
big
to be.
expense. And to build a house back to pay for the demolishment is a hard go.
Yeah, so the land bank is trying to fund a lot of the pre-development work themselves. They're kind of doing it through some of the rural preservation funds that are available to Seneca Housing. They're doing it with some of the housing trust fund money. And essentially us being able to offer incentives is one more piece of that puzzle in making these projects feasible.
And if we look at the IDA as funding projects that would not go forward without the support of the IDA, these might fall into that category. Okay,
That's it.
that's it. Ben,
I have a request that we get the solar committee scheduled and started and, not right away, but that's a,
would you like to chair it?
sure.
Then I would enthusiastically support your recommendation,
Okay,
provided you chair it, Ben.
okay.
Okay,
I'll work on that.
all right, anything else? I'll take if not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.